Hello, Tritons, whether you're a new Triton or a returning one.
Welcome to Fall Quarter.
We are thrilled to be here
to support you wherever you are on your journey.
ISPO is here for you.
Whether you are in this time zone
or somewhere else around the world.
Many of you will be joining us from your home countries,
while some are on campus or down the street.
We are here for you.
We are ready to connect with you.
To make sure that you have the support you need.
This quarter is unlike any before and likely any to come.
Just know that no matter the challenges you face,
we are here to support you.
So as you prepare to start your courses, just remember,
we are a phone call, email, or Zoom meeting away.
ISPO is here for you.
ISPO is here for you.
Welcome to Fall Quarter.
Hi everyone, sorry, I don't know why you weren't able to hear that video. But the gist of it is welcome to UC San Diego. We're really happy to have you here. My name is Emily Stewart. I'm one of the international student advisors. Now you can hear, okay, good. Thank you for letting me know. And yeah, even though you're not here on campus, we're really, really happy to have you at UC San Diego. And welcome to orientation. So today's session will be on knowing the rules studying outside the US. And I am happy to introduce my colleague, Gabby Hoffman. So Gabby, go ahead and take it over.
Thank you so much, Emily. Hi, everyone. So sorry for those technical glitches this morning. Hope you can hear me now. As Emily said, my name is Gabby Hoffman. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Experience and Engagement here at the International Students and Programs Office. A huge welcome to all of you. We are so excited to welcome you to San Diego this fall, whether that's remotely or in person. And we know many of you are beginning your programs remotely. So we're happy that you're here for this session to talk about kind of those different rules and what applies to you. So before we begin today, just know that you are in listen-only mode for the session. So that means that you can hear us, hopefully, but we cannot hear you. We are recording, so you'll be able to view this webinar recording at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. We normally post those within about a week or two after we have presented on this topic. So take a look there and we will have that recording ready for you. You are welcome to ask questions. So please use the Q&A feature to submit questions rather than the chat. You can also contact us at icontact.ucsd.edu and one of our advisors can help you. Okay, so today's session is relevant to students who are planning to remain outside of the US this fall and will begin their programs remotely. We will talk about your support system on campus, discuss F1 and J1 regulations. We'll review your immigration documents together and review resources for travel and emergencies as well. Throughout our time together, I may ask you some questions, so be sure to pay attention. Locate the raise hand icon on your screen to stay engaged. We will be polling and asking questions to see your thoughts on certain questions that we bring up throughout the presentation. We just wanted to let all of you know that ISPO is here for you. We know that these last 18 months have been like no other. And this quarter, as UC San Diego returns to campus, we know that there will still be adjustments as we emerge from this pandemic. But as you prepare to start your programs remotely, know that ISPO is your one-stop for questions and resources no matter where you are. We have 20 friendly advisors, administrative staff, and student assistants who are ready to help you. ISPO can advise you on understanding your immigration status, rules for working on and off campus, traveling, and on how to navigate academic adjustment and campus life. Another form of advising that ISPO does is programming or hosting engaging events or programs to help you create the best experience while studying at UC San Diego. Some of those amazing events are happening online throughout orientation these next couple of weeks, so we hope you will join us there. ISPO is not the only office on campus, of course, who will be helping you during your program of study. If you are a graduate student, contact your graduate coordinator of your program. If you are an undergraduate student, be sure to familiarize yourself with your college and their academic advising office. They'll help you navigate making progress during your program. You can also rely on your professors in your classes and faculty in your department. Lastly, there are other offices on campus that can help you during your program. Sometimes asking one question, such as, "Can I study part-time this quarter?" will require that you communicate with multiple offices, including ISPO, your college or department, and the Office of the Registrar. So as you can see, your support system at UC San Diego is made up of various units on campus. As you engage in virtual communication with campus units, take note of varying communication methods. While ISPO is available through Zoom advising and on a drop-in basis, other campus units may only be available through the Virtual Advising Center, for example, or only by email. So be sure to note that when you're contacting various different support units on campus. All right, so now let's look at some of the rules that apply to you this fall quarter. We use the phrase maintaining status quite a bit when talking about regulations, but what does it actually mean to maintain your status? What does it mean to hold an active CVIS record, valid F1 or J1 status, or even to fall out status? When ISPO first issues you a Form I-20 or DS 2019, you hold initial status. This means you're ready to start your program on the program's start date listed on your document. Once you arrive in the US and start your program, ISPO will then activate your CVIS record. Maintaining status means that you will follow certain rules, regulations, and reporting requirements for the duration of your program. If you don't follow the rules, you can then fall out of status and accrue unlawful presence in the United States, which is not good. You always want to make sure you're maintaining status while you are in the United States. You're expected to maintain your F1 or J1 status by following the rules and reporting requirements through your last day of enrollment or classes. Now, you'll notice that the program end date on your Form I-20 or DS 2019 is only an expected or projected program end date. ISPO will adjust the program end date on your I-20 or DS 2019 to your actual last day of enrollment and classes. From your true program end date, you can continue to maintain your status, but enter into your grace period. The grace period allows you to plan for your next steps. You can, during this period of time, apply for work, start classes at a new school, prepare to depart the US, or even change your visa status. F1 students have 60 days of a grace period, while J1 students have 30 days. You can continue to maintain active status if you apply for work authorization after graduation. If you transfer to a new school to start studies at a different degree level within the next 5 months after you complete your degree, you'll return to initial status at the new school and start this process all over again. However, if you decide to depart the US or do not take any action before the end of your grace period, your CVIS record will be auto-completed and will no longer be active. Maintaining status means that you will follow certain rules, regulations, and reporting requirements for the duration of your program. F1 and J1 students outside the US for the fall quarter who hold initial status are not subject to these regulations until arrival. Let's look at some of these rules that may impact you even if you start your programs remotely. Full-time enrollment. You should plan to enroll and remain enrolled in a minimum of 12 units each academic quarter at UC San Diego. Summer is not required and is considered a vacation term. International students are required to enroll full-time. However, there are exceptions to taking less than 12 units. Prior to dropping to less than 12 units, though, you have to apply for a reduced course load from ISPO through the iPortal. You should all be familiar with the iPortal. This is the system, the database through which you applied for your initial I-20. So the iPortal is used for all different sorts of request types, including a reduced course load like the one we're talking about here. Since in your cases, if you're studying outside the United States, your I-20 or DS 2019 is not yet activated, ISPO will not reflect an approval of a reduced course load if that is the case for you, if you take less than 12 units. However, you will still be required to request authorization in the iPortal, even if you're outside the United States. If you end up taking less than 12 units this fall, you'll still be eligible to use an academic reduced course load or a medical reduced course load once you arrive to campus. Think of this quarter as time to practice and adjust to your classes at UC San Diego, but again, be sure to maintain 12 units this quarter. Okay, so next, let's test your knowledge about academic integrity, which is something all students need to think about when it comes to maintaining status.
Well, Gabi, before we do that, I think you need to reshare your screen and it'll allow you to share your audio.
If my friend and I study together, it's okay to submit the exact same assignment and paper to our professor, since we'll probably come up with the same answers.
Everyone for participating. This is false. Hopefully the sound worked. You guys could all hear that. Academic integrity violations at UC San Diego, at any institution in the United States, have a serious impact on your immigration status, which we want to make sure all of our students understand. You can learn about excelling with integrity by visiting the Academic Integrity Office at aio.ucsd.edu. Be sure when you're starting all of your classes to review course syllabi and understand what is expected of you when collaborating with your classmates and conducting research. Those who are subject to suspensions due to academic integrity violations can face 1 quarter to 1 full academic year of a suspension from UC San Diego. So this can cause delayed enrollment at UCSD and ultimately the inability to continue your program of study online or in person with UC San Diego. And again, this applies to students who are studying remotely as well. So be sure you are following all the rules of your classes, make sure you understand all the expectations. And if you have any doubts at all, the Academic Integrity Office is a great place to go to make sure you're doing the right thing at aio.ucsd.edu. All right, now let's test your knowledge about work authorization, another way of maintaining your status.
Now that I have a social security card, I can work anywhere, anytime.
All right, those of you chose false, that is correct. Oops, let's do this next one. So F1 and J1 students who do not hold active status are not subject to employment regulations for international students. I know this is a popular question, the topic for our international students who are starting their studies outside the US. So do not start working until you have proper work authorization to do so. International students who are planning to be outside the US for the fall term and have plans to work for UC San Diego, perhaps as a TA or for a GSR position. If you're planning to do that remotely, you will need to work with your department directly to discuss your plans about working remotely from abroad. While it's possible to work remotely, we've had some students do this in the last year at UC San Diego while being outside the US. an F1 or J1 status, it's important to note that it's your responsibility to comply with all applicable income tax laws, including tax filing and payment mandates in the US and California, and any country where you reside and work. So if you happen to find an employment opportunity in your home country and it's for a US employer, be transparent. Let them know you do not hold valid F1 or J1 status yet as a student outside the United States. We know this is a complex topic. It's something, of course, we've never come across before until students started studying remotely outside the US. If you have any questions, we encourage you to visit iwork.ucsd.edu to explore different types of employment available to you during and after your program. And again, if you do plan on working remotely for UC San Diego, for a US employer while you are outside the US, work with your department directly to find out about all the different tax laws and things that you need to be aware of, so you can factor that into your decision and your employer is aware. All right, so now we're going to perform a document self-check together. If you have these documents handy, take them out. Some of you may not yet have a valid visa or Form I-94. Of course, if you haven't entered the US on that record, you will not have that. But it's still good to review these documents together so you know what they are once you do obtain them. So again, take a look if you have it to hand, your passport, visa page, if you have that already, your Form I-20 or DS 2019, and your Form I-94. If you've already entered the US before in a previous status, it might be helpful, but you will get this I-94 when you actually enter the US with your UCSD I-20 or DS 2019. So it's not that important at this point. Just a quick note, if you were not able to register and attend ISPO's Meet ISPO and understand your immigration document session, make sure you access the recording when available to get a more in-depth look at your immigration documents. All right. So we're going to go ahead and watch the next video about your immigration documents.
I think I can throw away past immigration documents like my I-20 and DS 2019 if I get updated ones. This is false. So any of your immigration documents that you've ever received before, let's say that you attended a school prior to UC San Diego, or you've been issued multiple I-20s from UC San Diego because you had it updated with new information. It's important you never throw away any past I-20s or DS 2019 documents. Always keep those on hand. Typically, students, when they apply for benefits after they depart their program at UC San Diego, whether it's employment benefits or a different visa type, those past documents will be asked for in your application. So just be sure to hold on to them. Of course, always use your most current I-20 or DS 2019 when you are traveling. Oops. All right. So your document self-check. Your immigration documents are extremely important. You'll use them during your program to apply for work authorization, a driver's license, bank account, social security card, and other benefits. As we've just discussed, be sure to keep all copies of your Form I-20 or DS 2019 from ISPO and every institution you attend. You never know when you're going to need them. Keep all of your documents valid and up to date. It's also a good idea to take photos of your document and keep digital copies on your phone so they're accessible. We know also during the pandemic, of course, that Form I-20s have been issued electronically. This is still permitted, and students are receiving these electronically, which is great because it makes it easier and more accessible. For now, we plan on continuing to issue those electronically. DS 2019s, however, can only be issued in hard copy form. So you need to make sure you always have a hard copy for travel or when applying for a visa. Lastly, each time you enter the US, remember that you have to do this document self-check that we're going to go over to make sure that you are maintaining your status correctly. All right, so the first step in the document self-check process is your passport. Ensure that your biographical information is correct. The date of expiration, so for all of your passports, it must be valid for at least 6 months into the future. If your passport is expiring, it can be renewed inside or outside the US at your country's embassy or consulate. We do want to make you aware as well, there are certain countries, it's called the 6-month club. There's a list of, I believe, 38 different countries where students do not need to have the passport valid 6 months into the future. They are allowed to have less than this. You can find more information on our website under visa renewal process about passports and the 6-month club. But for the vast majority of students, we always encourage them to make sure your passport is valid for at least 6 months into the future, just to facilitate travel and make sure you're maintaining your status while you're here in the US. Also note on your passport, again, here's where you will note the date of expiration. Make sure that is valid into the future. And yes, again, we just want to make sure that's absolutely clear, make sure it is valid into the future. And if you are part of the 6-month club, you are not subject to this, but we encourage you to make sure that it is renewed, it is valid at all times. All right, your visa stamp. This is actually a topic that can be kind of confusing for our students. Certainly is confusing for different departments on campus as well. So we just want to clarify what a visa is. So the document that is in your passport rather, is your US visa. This is your visa stamp. This page can be located again in your passport, and it is really, think of it like a key. Like a key, you only need a valid visa to enter the United States. However, once you're inside the US, it's okay if you no longer have the key or a valid visa, as long as you are maintaining your status, which we'll talk about later, what that means. You can remain in the US. So for example, some students get really concerned if they are in the United States and their visa has expired. Let's say it's only valid for 2 years, but their I-20 is valid for 4 years. If your visa stamp has expired and you're still maintaining your status in every other way, that is, you're enrolled in full-time units, you are excelling with integrity, you're progressing in your studies, your passport is valid, you don't need to worry about that visa stamp expiring. You only need to be aware of this if you're planning to travel outside the US and you need to come back into the US. Then you'll need that key again, and it will need to be renewed. So make sure that you do keep on top of the expiration date, but don't worry if it expires while you are already in the United States. So again, the expiration date, make sure you take a look at this, but don't worry if it's going to expire soon if you're here in the US. If you are planning to travel and it's expired, you do need to apply for a renewal of your visa. And it can only be renewed outside the US. You cannot renew a visa from within the United States. Ensure your biographical information on your visa is correct. Note the number of entries, should be multiple entries, which lets you know how many times you can enter the US. S is for single time, M is for multiple entries. And again, note the expiration date. And again, if your visa expires, it can only be renewed outside the US in a US embassy or consulate. All right, let's test your knowledge. You are inside the US, and notice that your F1 visa is expiring in 2 months, which is in the middle of a fall quarter. Can you remain in the US legally? All right, yes, you can. As long as you're maintaining your status in every other way, your I-20 is valid or your DS 2019 is valid, you can remain in the US legally. Also be aware, F1 students are obligated to keep their Form I-20 up to date. Same for J1 students with the Form DS 2019. Make sure the program end date, which is an expected program end date, is valid, in addition to the program level, major, and biographical information. So if you change your major at any point, or if you need to extend your program, which we'll go over shortly, you need to make sure you're making those changes through ISPO, okay, through the iPortal, so that it's reflected accurately on your I-20. And you must submit any changes within 10 days, again, through the iPortal. So make sure to keep on top of that. It's an extra step for our students. We know that even if you change your major and it's reflected in Triton Link, it also needs to be changed on your I-20. Make sure you process that step. All right, so you should have all logged into iPortal. You should all be familiar with the iPortal. We want to really make sure that you are all logging in again to complete the check-in process for fall 2021. So if you are planning to come to the United States, which shouldn't be you if you're here in this presentation, if you're outside the US and you have a fall start on your I-20, you need to make sure that you submit an amendment form so we can adjust the record with a different start date. So for example, if you are taking all online classes, you're staying in your home country, but you don't plan on coming to the United States physically until winter 2022, you must submit an I-20 or DS 2019 amendment request so that we can adjust the program start date on your record. This is really important, okay? If you are coming to the United States, your plans have changed and you're able to get into in-person courses, you also need to complete the check-in form through the iPortal so we can see this register your record, okay? This activates your record so that you can maintain status in the United States. It's also important for all students to update your current address. If you are outside the US, your current address is going to be your foreign address in Triton Link, okay? So make sure that is up to date. If you're in the US, it's going to be your local US address, okay? So just be sure, we'll be sending reminders through our newsletters and to students to complete the Fall 21 check-in form. It will route you to different options depending on your situation, whether it is to request an amendment or to activate your CVIS record, but be sure to complete that as soon as possible. Okay, so a little bit of information for when you do actually arrive in the US, which hopefully is this winter, maybe it is spring, but only once you have arrived in the US will you receive your most updated Form I-94. Okay, so this is generated upon your arrival in the US. Basically what it is, it's an electronic arrival departure record. So it will list your class of admission, which means either F1 or J1. It will list the admit until date, which for all of you should be D/S, which means duration of status. What that means is it says that you are allowed to stay in the US for the duration of the dates on your I-20 or your DS 2019. We'll also have your name. Be sure your name is listed correctly here. Sometimes the Customs and Border Protection officials will invert the names. They'll be backwards. Make sure it's correct. You could submit a correction here because we want to make sure it matches your visa and your I-20. That record is correct and matches all your other paperwork. But again, if you're not entering this fall, this does not apply to you yet. It will be applicable once you do. You can access your Form I-94 about 24 to 48 hours after arrival by visiting i94.cbp.dhs.gov. We'll send all of you again through our newsletters information on how to check this as well. Again, so this is what the I-94 form will look like when you access it. It will have all of your information here, your travel information that you enter, and it will pull up your record for you. So you enter your information from your passport. And then it will show you again here your class of admission, F1 or J1, admit until DS, and make sure again that your name is spelled correctly. All right, address reporting. So in addition to your immigration documents, you also need to ensure you report your most updated address to ISPO. By doing so, it's very, very easy. You just need to go to tritonlink.ucsd.edu and click on addresses to update your US address if you're here, your foreign address, and also emergency contact information within 10 days of any changes. Okay, so again, for your current address, it should always reflect where you currently are. If you're not going to be in the US, make sure it's your address where you currently are in your home country or wherever else you might be in the world. All right, so here's just some information about how to access this. You go to my Triton link. Under format for entering a foreign address, it tells you exactly in that section how to enter your current address that is outside the United States so that you can accurately reflect where you are for this fall quarter. As many of you are preparing to travel or will travel eventually, we want to make sure that you visit itravel.ucsd.edu to learn about what documents you may need when seeking entry into the US. And also, for those of you who are planning to explore California's amazing locations, before you start your studies here, learn about what documents you should carry when traveling within the US. All of this is covered at itravel.ucsd.edu. Make sure you have a valid travel signature on the second page of your Form I-20 or first page of your Form DS 2019. All of you will have already automatically gotten a travel signature. It is valid for 1 year from the date it was signed. So you don't need to request this unless it is going to be expiring soon. Just be aware of that. You should all have this already. And on the Contact Us page of ISPO's orientation website, as well as our main website, you'll find a download link for ISPO's International Student Emergency Contacts. So this is really important if you, let's say, are trying to enter the United States. Perhaps Customs and Border Protection officials have additional questions. They need to verify your record with ISPO. There are emergency numbers that you can contact there so that we can assist. For true health and safety related emergencies, there are numbers to call there as well. So we recommend going to the iorientation.ucsd.edu site to download this emergency contacts card and keep it with you. This is essentially what it will look like. So it's very convenient to keep on your phone as a digital copy. Again, it's important phone numbers as well as tips on what to do. If for any reason you are kept for additional questioning at the airport, this will give you some guidance on what to expect, how to handle the situation, and who to contact. All right, so I hope you all learned a lot from today's session. I know it's a lot of information. Again, we are recording this and it is going to be available for all of you. ISPO also provides regular updates to immigration regulations and reminders to help you maintain your status on our Instagram and Facebook account. Another useful tool is the UC San Diego mobile app, which has helpful tools to navigate campus. And again, lastly, we do our best to remind you of regulatory updates through social media, the app as described here, and through ISPO's iStudents newsletter sent to your UC San Diego email. But it is up to you and it is your responsibility to stay up to date and know the rules. So be sure you're opening those messages and you're clicking on those newsletters so you know exactly what to expect and how to maintain your status. Thanks, everyone. Now I'll go ahead and turn it back over to our host, Emily.
Thanks, Gabby. Yes, hopefully everyone found that helpful. And we do have some questions, and I know we have some time. So Gabby, if you don't mind, I might throw some questions at you from our students. So the first one is, if I'm planning to arrive to the US after 1 week after the start date, I'm assuming they mean on their start date on their I-20 or DS 2019, what should I do or who should I contact to tell about this situation?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, that's a great question. And it's a very common one from our students who are experiencing visa delays or travel delays right now. So students who are planning to enter the US this fall, first we encourage you to attend our session for knowing the rules inside the United States. That's going to be a more relevant session for you and hope you can attend. But the first thing you want to make sure you do is go into the iPortal to download a travel support letter. So students who have a start date of September 20th, which all of you should have, if you're going to enter after that date, it will be helpful to have a support letter which explains that we are supporting all of our international students to arrive in the United States up to 2 weeks after the start date, that is October 8th. So it states this clearly on the letter. We encourage you to print this out and take it with you. We don't need to make an adjustment to your I-20 at this stage since you're only arriving a week late. If you were going to be arriving much later after that, we would encourage you to contact either your college or your department, depending on whether you are an undergraduate or graduate student, to let them know so that you can make arrangements. And then you would need to contact ISPO to let us know that if you need to adjust your program start date to a subsequent quarter, we would need to change the start date on your I-20 using the amendment form that I talked about earlier. But if you're only going to be about a week late, again, just download the letter, bring it with you when you travel, and that should be sufficient for entry to the US.
Great, thanks. Okay, next question is, are international students allowed to stay on campus, assuming they have on-campus housing during the breaks, especially this year because of COVID, traveling abroad is not advised?
Yeah, so typically UC San Diego's policy has been that the dorms and the apartments, so on-campus housing, is closed for the breaks. We know that this creates a hardship for our international students. Even before the pandemic, this was a hardship for our students. So we typically would work with local hotels to arrange reduced rates on their hotel prices to help students stay in the US. Obviously, this is even more of an issue with international travel right now with the pandemic. We don't have further updates from housing and dining right now about whether they are offering more availability for housing during the break. They will provide more information soon, but typically, again, what we'll do, students do have to arrange their own accommodation, and we're usually able to arrange for reduced rates for students to stay here.
Great. Another question kind of similar to the one 2 questions ago is, may I enter the US after the I-20 start date due to late visa approval? Maybe you can talk about if they can't arrive after the 2nd week.
Yeah, if students are unable to arrive by October 8th, if you know that's going to be the case, we strongly encourage you to contact your college if you're an undergraduate student, or your department if you are a graduate student. Typically, departments, colleges don't encourage students to start after the 2nd week of the quarter because the quarter moves so quickly. It's very hard to catch up with in-person coursework. If you're going to be delayed that long, they might at that point.
Oh, your audio went away, Gabi. Oh, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, your college or department, if you're going to be arriving after October 8th, might recommend that you defer to a subsequent quarter or year. It is really up to them and up to you to discuss that with them and what your plans are and your options are if you're going to be arriving after October 8th. If that's the case, if you need to defer, then you will need to get that approval from your college or department and then complete through the iPortal an I-20 or DS 2019 amendment form so that we can update your start date to allow you to enter for the quarter that you can physically arrive in the US. So again, just make sure you're keeping in good contact with your college or your department first.
All right. And then sort of related to that, if we don't start fall 21 due to visa delays, should we still complete the I-Triton orientation by the fall deadline? And if we do it, will we still need to redo it if we enter the US at a later quarter date?
That is a great question. We still encourage students to do the orientation. You don't absolutely have to if you know you're not going to be here for certain. We will offer it again for the winter term. We will offer it again, for every term that students are allowed to enter. But it wouldn't hurt to complete it. If you do complete it now, you do not have to repeat it when you do enter the United States. We will offer orientations for students for those who are entering the US at later dates, and you can sort of get a refresher through those presentations, but you don't have to do I-Triton all over again.
Okay, another question about if they're enrolling remotely from their home country, can they take less than 12 units? Should they submit an explicit request to ISPO for this?
Excellent question. I'm glad you brought it up because we talked about it early in the presentation, but I want to make sure it's really clear for students. If you are still planning to take your classes remotely, yes, international students still need to take 12 units. And if you are planning on taking less than 12 units remotely, you need to submit a request to ISPO for a reduced course load. Okay, so make sure that you're still maintaining those units while you're outside the US.
Great. Okay. Another question from a student, an Iranian student, about export control and what steps they need to take to study or research outside the US. I don't know if you can answer that or point them, to who to talk to about that.
Yeah, definitely. We are working with our export control office on some of the restrictions that certain students face from certain countries, including Iran, on studying remotely. You know, it's a complication that came up last year with the pandemic. I encourage you to contact inewstudent@ucsd.edu. That is our new student email inbox. That will enable you, we'll be able to connect you then with our export control office to see if they can apply for an export license. To be quite honest, export licenses take many, many months to approve for remote study outside the US. So it might mean needing to work with your department on deferral, but I don't want to get into too many details yet. Again, just contact inewstudent@ucsd.edu and we can work with you and the export control office on your next steps.
Great, thanks. Okay, there's several questions, different variations of the same question about if they're not able to enter for fall and they get an updated I-20 or DS-2019, do they have to reapply for a new visa?
Very good question. So we've seen in the last year when this occurred, we've seen sometimes inconsistencies with how Customs and Border Protection, who ultimately decide when they look at your visa to allow entry into the US or not, how they're looking at this and what to do. What we encourage you to do, if this is the case, you're not entering the US this quarter, but you've already gotten your visa, we encourage you to contact your local US embassy or consulate to see if you can still use that visa that was issued to enter the US at a later point. They can provide guidance on whether that is valid for use.
Okay, great. A couple questions, if you could just re-explain the travel signature.
Yeah. So the travel signature should be on, for those of you in F1 status or going to have F1 status, that should be on page 2 of your document if you have it, and on page 1 of your DS 2019 if you're a J1 student. So this travel signature, every single student, when we issued you an I-20, an initial, every student should have it already signed. So this enables you, when you get to the border, to basically it's our verification that you are a student at UCSD and we are permitting you to travel, right? That we're giving you that authorization. Everyone should already have that signature. It is valid for 1 year from the date of the signature on it. So many of you were issued I-20s this summer, let's say July or August. That signature is valid through July or August of next year. You don't need to apply for a new one if you're traveling internationally before then. For those of you who are getting an adjustment to your I-20, so let's say that you need to defer to another quarter or another year, when we update your I-20, you'll get, again, an updated travel signature with that date on it. So just make sure it's valid when you travel. It's valid for 1 year. You don't need to renew it every time you travel internationally. And again, it is only needed if you're traveling internationally. If you're traveling domestically and your travel signature is expired, that's okay. It's only if you're traveling outside the US and want to re-enter the US do you need a valid travel signature.
Great, thanks. This isn't a question, but just so you know, Gavi, a student says that wants to know what mic you're using and your voice sounds amazing. So apparently you're coming through loud and clear.
Well, thank you. It is a Dell laptop from UC San Diego. So thank you. I'm glad you can all hear me. That's one of the tech questions we always worry about.
Okay, I'm trying to go through the question. Let's see. Yeah, there's a couple questions about, so if they're, not planning to come to the US for this fall, is there a deadline for them to submit that amendment request to update the start date on their I-20 or DS 2019?
That is an excellent question. I believe the deadline is listed on the check-in form. Typically, it's about week 3 of the quarter. So just taking a quick look at the calendar, I believe this year the deadline will be the 15th of October, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to take a look at our website again. It is on the check-in form page. Maybe we can put that in the chat, that link to our check-in form page, because it says the deadline there. So make sure you do the check-in form, that will direct you, but make sure it's done by week 3 so we can make necessary adjustments in a timely manner.
A question about working on campus. Where can they find information about job postings?
Yeah, really good question. So UC San Diego has a great career center on campus that offers appointments virtually as well as in person. They keep a database called Handshake that lists all of the opportunities available to students both on and off campus. So if you go to careercenter.ucsd.edu and if you look for Handshake, all of you should have access as registered students, and then you can log in and you can see what jobs are currently posted and available.
Another work-related question. For student, so the student requested amendment to their Form I-20, and in there it gives information about not being eligible for OPT until after 1 year from the date of the new I-20. So does this mean that for a student whose program is 1 year long, but who only enters the US for winter and spring quarters will not be eligible for OPT at the end of the program?
Yeah, you do. So for OPT, our current guidance is that you do need to have a CVIS registered, a CVIS active record to be eligible for OPT. We are actually having an employment specific session, I believe later this week and into next week. So employment in the United States, employment remotely, as well as employment eligibility for those who are not entering the US for their first term. That will go over this in a lot more detail. And we also encourage you to visit our coronavirus information page, which goes over this in more detail. Because this was, I know, a complicated issue for a lot of students last year. So we encourage you to attend those sessions and visit that site for more information about eligibility for OPT, as well as CPT, curricular practical training, that is taking part in an off-campus internship or work during your studies at UC San Diego.
Great, thanks. Another question for those who've entered the US, by when is the I-94 to be generated?
The I-94 usually is generated within 24 to 48 hours after you enter the US.
Awesome. And then a question about our virtual advising. If they've been trying to sign up, but they keep getting messages that there's no more space. Any recommendations about how to reach us?
We know our wait times have been very, very long. It's such an incredibly busy time of year. We do have all of our advisors advising as round the clock during the week, but we do recognize that those wait times have been long despite all of our staffing efforts in addressing this. So we recommend, if you cannot get through to an advisor, please email us at istudents@ucsd.edu. That's also a good way to reach us. It is monitored daily, and that your question can be then forwarded to an advisor for follow-up if you can't get through to us through Zoom advising.
Great. And there's a couple of questions about if they can arrive in the middle of fall quarter. Is that possible?
Really something that you need to discuss with your department or your college. They will ultimately determine if that is the best course of action for you with academic success. Again, because the quarter moves so quickly, it's only 10 weeks long. So it's a lot of information, crammed into 1 week at a time. They will only be able to really give you that permission. If you do have permission to enter mid-quarter, beyond October 8th, please get in touch with ISPO. We want to make sure that you don't have difficulties entering the US. With the start date of September 20th coming into the quarter so late, we want to make sure that we are helping you to the best extent we can, but you really need to start with your college or your department first to get that permission.
Perfect. A question about deferring all the way to next year to fall 2022. And they've submitted the request in iPortal, which explains that we're going to cancel their current CVIS record. And then they want to know, will their CVIS number still be the same that they used to schedule their visa appointment?
Yeah, so for students who are deferring for an entire academic year, unfortunately, we cannot keep that record active for a full year. Students do need to apply for a brand new I-20 or DS 2019, and that does mean you will get a brand new CVIS ID. So again, this I know raises questions about visa validity. If some of you have gotten visas already with your previous I-20 CVIS ID, or DS 2019 CVIS ID, or if you booked your visa appointment with a different CVIS ID, we encourage you to contact your U.S. consulate or embassy to see if you need to apply for another visa. They will advise accordingly, but yes, you'll receive a new CVIS ID with that request.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, here's a question about if they do not, so they're outside the U.S. for fall and they do not enroll in 12 units, will they still be able to enter the U.S. on an F1 visa for winter 2022?
Yeah, as long as you show enrollment for winter 2022 and have a 2022 start date, you can still enter the United States.
There are a couple questions about, I guess, the first, after they enter the U.S., or maybe it sounds like there's a couple that might be here now, and they go home sometime, during Christmas, or for whatever reason they have to go home in the middle of the quarter. Do they need to let us know? Or if not, is there anything they need to do?
That's a really good question, because I know different universities, different institutions have different policies or steps for students to go through. For us, if you're traveling in the middle of the quarter or over the breaks and coming back, you do not need to inform us, but you do need to go through the document self-check again when you return, that piece that I was talking about with the I-94 and checking your visa and your I-94 record. So just be sure when you leave the US that you have a valid travel signature, which you should if you're a new student, valid visa, and your valid passport. And when you come back in, you are going to be generated a new electronic I-94 record, and you want to make sure that all those entries are correct. Sometimes CBP officers make mistakes. So just do that document self-check process again when you re-enter, and that's it. You don't need to inform us any other way.
Okay, thanks. So, okay, I think we have about 5 more minutes. Let me try and get through some of the common questions here. Here's one. Okay, they're enrolled in remote classes as well as in-person classes for fall, and they'll be entering before October 6th. Once they're on campus, can they enroll in fully in-person classes, or will they still be required to continue with remote classes?
You won't be required to enroll in fully in-person courses in terms of your F1 status. If you get here, you can still keep your online courses that you're in, as long as there is at least one of your classes that has an in-person component, which sounds like it does. So yeah, you don't need to change that.
Perfect. Here's a great question. Are there online mental support services available for students studying from outside the US?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So just to kind of give you a brief overview of what is available at UC San Diego, for students who are registered students, students who are here are able to access CAPS, which stands for Counseling and Psychological Services. They are a wonderful resource for our students. They offer one-on-one counseling, group support, different programs. For students who are physically outside the United States, because of certain laws governing how to provide services to students outside the state of California, CAPS cannot offer one-on-one counseling. However, they do contract with a third party that does provide this to students outside the United States. It's called MySSP. More information is on the CAPS site. So they have created a special section for students who are outside the US. If you need to access those services, there is a way to do that. And just to be clear as well, even if you can't get one-on-one counseling outside the US with CAPS here, you can still participate in their support, online virtual support programs and events and things like that online. So that still is open to you as long as you remain enrolled and are a registered student.
All right, let's see, maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Here's one about the COVID-19 vaccine. A student just got their second shot and uploaded their verification today. Since they uploaded it after the deadline, is it going to affect their move-in process?
That is a good question. I don't know if it will. I would, I would contact student health. I'd contact housing just to let them know. I'm not sure how quickly they're placing holds on records or certain flags on records for things like that. So be sure to contact housing and student health to let them know you've uploaded it, you have this verification. Maybe also bring verification of your vaccine physically with you, a printout, in case they ask to see this before you move in.
Perfect. Let's see if I can choose maybe one more. Sorry, I just want to find one that's applicable to many students. Okay, here's one about how can they find out information about the bus services or shuttle routes if they do not have their own personal vehicle?
Yeah. So if you go to transportation.ucsd.edu, they have a great page that goes over all the different public transportation options in San Diego, including what type of public transportation pass that students get with their student IDs to be able to use public transportation. So again, it's transportation.ucsd.edu.
All right, well, I know we didn't get to everyone's questions, but Bobby, maybe you want to remind people of how to reach us.
So again, if you have any questions, please contact us at icontact@ucsd.edu. If you can't reach us on Zoom, do email us. Those email addresses are listed on our website as well. And just quickly, some reminders about some of the social programs happening with orientation this and next week. We have our meetups that are hosted by students for students. So interest meetups here are a place where you can connect with fellow students, fellow Tritons who share similar interests. And then we have regional meetups as well that are hosted by students to get in touch with other students from their own region of the world and give them advice for studying as an international student at UC San Diego. Again, this is open to all students, whether you're studying remotely or in person here at UCSD. And then we have our events calendar. So again, if you want to know what's going on at UC San Diego all year long, our iEvents calendar is live. Features globally engaged events hosted again by student orgs and campus departments throughout the year. A lot of these are virtual, so really encourage you to join and be part of the community as well. And some final reminders here. Please continue to register for other orientation sessions. This is just the start of orientation. So we have a lot ahead of us by visiting iorientation.ucsd.edu. And at the end of the session, you'll get an email with a survey. So please fill it out. Let us know how we can better serve you. And then stay up to date by visiting iupdates.ucsd and by checking, again, those ISPO newsletters that come into your inbox weekly. You can always contact ISPO, again, as mentioned, and follow us on social media as well. So thank you, everyone, again. Thank you for joining us. Whether you're joining us from inside the US or from the other side of the world, on behalf of ISPO here at UC San Diego, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. Have a great fall quarter and see you all at our next session.